Alright, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to another video on the channel. So I am back at the shop and I want to get some progress done on the 240, but I don't know if I filmed this. The oil, so let's start from the beginning. I ran the car maybe like max 60 seconds in total, right? I was having a little leak from one of the fittings that go to the block for the water lines for the turbo. So I didn't want to run it because it was leaking. I'm glad I didn't, because there's also coolant getting into the oil. So I'm under the impression that fitting on the block is a coolant port, and that's the reason why I'm having this issue. So what I want to do now is to rule out that is water. What I want to do is I want to jack the car high enough for me to get under, loosen the feed, and I want to put water in the system, or like coolant or whatever. And I have a coolant pressure tester. Once I put coolant in there, force the coolant into the engine. If coolant comes out of that passage, that means that's 100% the reason why I was having coolant in the engine. If it doesn't come out of there, that means internally something is wrong. I would have to take the whole thing apart again to find out what failed and go from there. I don't want to do that. All right, so this blue fitting is where he put the supposed oil feed. So I'm gonna just take the line off. It's not good on the fingers, by the way. Okay. There is nothing. Okay, so I shouldn't be entirely surprised that nothing came out from that line, because the coolant was drained. I didn't see anything come out from there, so that leaves me to be a little suspicious. I'm not even gonna lie. But to completely rule that out, what I would have to do is I would have to put some coolant in the system. So that is what I am going to do. I do want to add oil to the system, because there's no oil in this car right now because it was milky. Like, I checked the dipstick and it was milky, so I was like, oh snap, stop running it, immediately drain all the oil. And I have more oil that I should have just put in for the time being, but I didn't want the two to mix, so to mix again. So yeah, but anyway, I'm gonna throw some coolant in the radiator, not that much, and I'm gonna try to pressurize it, see if it comes through that fitting. If it comes through that fitting, we know that is the issue. I don't feel confident that it is the issue, especially pulling that line and I didn't see anything, but we'll see. All right, check that out. It's going down. It was going down faster before, but as soon as I took that line off, it started going down, because I pressurized this when the line was on. All right, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna try to pressurize it to 15 and then go under and see if I can hear where it's leaking from. Because if I can find out where it's leaking from, I could potentially fix it. I don't see any coolant coming out of that port, and I did add coolant to the radiator before I put the pressure tester on. I also didn't add a lot, so that could be the reason why this is not necessarily working. But I'm not gonna start the car just for the oil and the coolant to mix again. It defeats the purpose. Okay, so that did not work. It doesn't get up to too high of a pressure. So when I stopped and I tried to get under there fast, the pressure already went down before I can actually hear where it's coming from. So honestly, I don't know. There's not another person here to pump while I'm underneath the car. So I gotta figure out how I'm gonna do this. Okay, so I just added a whole gallon of coolant to the radiator instead of that little bit of amount that I did before. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm going to put the pressure tester on and see if it comes out anywhere. So I found a coolant link. I don't think it's the coolant link. Coolant leak, not link. Okay. No fucking way. So this coolant coming from the oil dipstick from the pan right there. I don't know if you can see this coolant oil here. And of course, just like in regular fashion, it's the worst possible fucking thing that could happen. Something is wrong on the inside of the fucking engine, and that's what caused the oil and the coolant to fucking mix. Which means everything has to come back apart. Quick update on what's going on. So, engine, you seen it was pulled out. Coolant is getting in the oil. Something's wrong internally, and because of that, this engine is basically useless. And because of that, what I'm gonna do, take all the accessories off, leave it as a long block, and put it on another engine. Right, picked up another engine. If you're thinking I have money, that's false. I'm just irresponsible. This is the engine that doesn't work. I have a bunch of parts on here that I need to remove to put on here, but I'm gonna remove these parts first. That way, when I take that off, I could just put them directly on here. Intake manifold is coming off. The motor mount I will just keep. There's nothing wrong with it. Exhaust manifold, the turbo is coming off. Clutch fan is coming off. I want to take my crank pulley off my engine and put it on. It's the ATI damper, intake manifold, and fuel rail, as well as the oil filter relocation. I'm gonna make sure that's correct before starting the engine. The coolant hoses are looped, so I'm gonna make sure I take those, put it on here. Yeah, I want to do my cams as well, my drop-in cams. I gotta do the 5.0 Ignite kit. There's a bunch of stuff I gotta do, so I'm gonna just get to it. I don't have the stand for the camera, so I can't set it down and just do it, but I'll record back when I have more info, I guess, or next steps. Alright, intake manifold is off. This is the one that was on it. It looks like a fake Greddy intake manifold. I won't be keeping the manifold because I actually have two. I have the one that's on there right now, and I also have another one that came off the engine. So I'm gonna be using one of those two. Might have a 1/8 MPT bung put in rather than putting my stock one on. Decent amount got done. Okay, so actually what did get done, anyways, so the, I guess, cold side, the intake manifold side of this engine is pretty much done. What I need to do is eventually I'm gonna put the flywheel and clutch kit on, then put the trans on so I could put the starter on. That way I don't have to try and work my way. Well, put that stuff on in the car, obviously. The oil filter relocation is on. What else? The coolant hoses are on. Fuel rail and injectors are on. On this side, I took the turbo manifold off. Turbo and manifold off. I'm not sure what kind of manifold that is, but it looks pretty cool. I think this is a T28 turbo. So I took that off as well. I'm going to be putting my setup on. But also what I thought about is, instead of, I don't want to say I'm doing it half-assed, because I don't feel as if I'm doing it half-assed. So instead of me just putting this on exactly how it is, one thing I do want to do is I want to get a 90 welded on here. I want to get a 1/8 MPT bung welded on here. And for my intercooler piping, for the IAT sensor, I want to get a 1/8 MPT bung welded on the cold side. So that will allow me to get rid of the IAT sensor that was drilled and tapped in the manifold. It'll look nicer, but also the IAT sensor for the link is supposed to be mounted in the intercooler piping. All right, back at the shop, continuing where we left off. I don't have much time today, so I'm gonna try to get it done as much as I can get done. Turbo is on. Turbo is on. I had a 90 welded here, and I had a 1/8 MPT fitting welded here, because I don't know if you guys knew, this was a long time ago, I drilled and tapped this because I didn't know anybody that could weld. Now I have the fitting welded. This is for the boost controller. I also had another fitting welded on the cold side of the intercooler piping. So this is the IAT sensor. That way it's not in the intake manifold anymore. So I had it drilled and tapped in the intake manifold, and it looked very tacky. Not a huge fan of that. I definitely ruined this intake manifold. This was the one that was vapor honed, but it was whatever. Now I have 2 OEM intake manifolds and a third Greddy BS one. So, I mean, it's whatever. I'll just keep it, I don't know, as a spare, I guess, just in case something happens. I could have that hole welded up and call it a day. But anyway, I want to get this engine in the car. And before I do that, one thing I do want to do is I want to take this OEM crank pulley off, and I want to put the ATI damper on. I also want to do the oil pan. So if I can do those two things, everything else I can do in the car. So like the cams, the cam trigger kit, that could be done in the car, so I don't need to worry about that. If I can get those two things done and then put the engine in the car, I think I'll be good. This is good success for the day. So let me try to get this pulley off. I bought a tool from Harbor Freight. Hopefully it works, and we'll go from there. Okay, so I thought I was gonna have more time doing this. I feel like I got here pretty, I wouldn't say like fairly early. I don't have that much time, so I gotta be in Brooklyn 6:45, and it's about to be 3 o'clock. So I also have to do some, like, go home, take a shower, wash my hair, all this. So it doesn't leave me with much time. So I'm gonna make an attempt to try to get this engine in this little bit of time that I have. I don't have my impact wrench, and I needed it to put this crank pulley on, so I'm debating on whether or not if I should just get the engine in and do everything underneath the car before I, start putting the radiator in. Obviously, like, having the radiator in limits my amount of space, so I think I'm just gonna try to do that. Try to throw it in real quick and then be out, maybe come back later in the day and finish it up. All right, so I went over my allotted time by like half an hour, 40 minutes, but the engine is in. This is good news. All right, so I'm gonna come back later on today, try to finish pretty much everything else. Since the engine is in, the 2 motor mounts have to be tightened. I loosened the motor mount so I can wiggle it in, and that's done. The slave needs to be hooked up, the trans mount needs to be bolted in, drive shaft needs to be put in, and that should be it from underneath the car as far as drivetrain wise. Once that's done, exhaust, wiring, fuel, and plumbing for water or coolant, and the intercooler piping, and then it should be pretty much ready to start. I'm gonna prime the system before I start it, make sure there's oil in the system and all that, and then yeah, it's just programming the ECU. So I can get the car running on the Adaptronic ECU just to bleed the system, but I think I would just want to go straight into the link, configure the CD5 to pair up with the link, and then go from there. I won't be able to drive the car on the street because the map that I set will be just to start the car. I don't know how to do all the other stuff to, you know, get the car to run and all that. Instead of paying somebody to give me a base tune and then dyno like a Pro Tune, I'm just gonna go straight to Pro Tune because I don't like wasting money, and I felt like I wasted money last time. Now that I have the Sequoia, well, I guess it wasn't a waste last time because I had to drive the car to the tuner, but now I could just get a base, I could just set up the base mat myself, get it on the trailer, and then drive it to get it tuned. So yeah, in a way I save money, even though with the toll I'm spending money. I still save money regardless. But anyways, I'll be back. All right, so we're back at the shop and it's crunch time. You know what I mean? I leave in like 2 days. I gotta do some packing and all this stuff. So this should be the last haul for the end of the video. It is like 4:20 right now, and there's some work that needs to be done on this car. All right, the engine is and drivetrain is finally bolted in and done. That took longer than it was supposed to. The exhaust wasn't fit in for some reason. The drive shaft didn't want to go in. Anyways, yeah, so that's all bolted in. Now it's time to get the stuff up top plumbed and ready to go. So I'm just gonna start putting the accessories on. I forgot to take the alternator off, so I gotta put the alternator on, but I'm glad I didn't put anything else in before I realized that. Okay, ran into another problem. I had a 90 welded on my turbo. Now the intercooler piping doesn't fit. So I don't know what that's about. Maybe because it was angled more up, I guess. I don't know. And also a couple is more pliable, so the 90 probably came out more. I don't know, but this is not gonna work. This probably has to get shortened or something. I don't know how that's gonna work, but good thing this car is on map, so it doesn't need the intercooler piping to run. Not to say that I'm gonna be driving this car around without intercooler piping. I would never do that, but at least if I wanted to turn it over to see if it runs and stuff like that, I can do it without having to have the intercooler piping on. So that's a problem for another day. I genuinely don't have time for that. So I'm gonna just continue. All right, so pretty much everything is plugged in. I did forget that for this cam trigger kit to work, you need the trigger wheel, and the trigger wheel is in this engine. I was gonna take those cams out to put them in this engine anyway, so I'm just gonna do that now. I know this video is kind of inconsistent because I just keep picking up the camera from when things are done, but I don't know. Okay, so here we are. We're at this point where all I have to do now is put oil in it and prime the fuel system, and I should be able to turn it over. So I'm gonna do that now. This valve cover I'm not gonna be using because it has an AN fitting welded to the back. Another one of my friends has another black valve cover that I'll be using, and then I'll fully mount the valve cover. All right, so should have power. I will know in a second. Yep. Last time priming the fuel. So what we're gonna do now, we are going to disconnect the plug for the injectors so it's not dumping fuel. All right, so this plug is unplugged and it does the injectors. So come around here. Prime all at once, nothing's gonna happen. Actually, that was page up, my bad. Oil pressure. We need to see this go up before we can try and start the car, so let's see. Okay, I don't know why it started. The injectors were unplugged. Yes. So we got oil pressure. Now it's time to start it. Come back here. Plug this plug back in. Let's plug back in. Everything looks good. Damn, it kind of took a little while for it to. Let's re-prime the system. I know I'm being super meticulous about this, but I don't want no issues. Okay. So oil pressure is right here. Fuel pressure, all that. A little off. Oh shit. All right, so from that last clip, I cut the video short because I didn't show it. What happened was oil got shot everywhere in the engine because the tensioner bolts or nuts weren't tight. So that was annoying. I am gonna check mechanical timing just to make sure things didn't skip because the car was running a little rough, and I also don't want to damage this engine. So just to be sure, I'm gonna make sure I do that. Also, I found some intake piping laying around that I've had for years because I've always wanted a solution for my intake. So I pretty much plumbed it up and it works perfectly. You see that? Crazy. But camera's gonna die. Thank you guys for watching. I appreciate y'all always. See y'all in the next one.